You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to debate some of the hot topics in Utah politics with our panel. This week we have Kirk Jowers and Charlie Luke. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Okay, so in the 4th Congressional District, polls showing it a toss-up.
Yep.
McAdams through the week announcing a poll that has him just 2 behind. A media blitz beginning with both of them as well. This is the hottest race for Utah's congressional delegation. Where do you see it as it stands right now?
The Utah media is so grateful. There is a legitimate race in Utah. This is exciting. I think it is a down-to-the-wire race, and I think Mia is still lightly ahead. She has been the whole way, but it's always been close, if not within margin of error, whether this is a 2-point or 5-point. It's really going to come down to messaging these last couple of months. Does someone really resonate or alienate? And they're throwing a ton of little petty things at each other. Does one of these things really take on some barnacles? It doesn't take a lot, and that could determine it.
All right.
So,
Democrats are feeling good about this seat.
Yeah, I think that Ben has a real shot at this race. I think his polling is accurate. If anyone is sick of hearing about this race yet, they haven't seen anything, because now that with Labor Day upon us, this is all we're going to hear about it. They're going to both be inundating the airwaves with ads. We're going to be hearing more and more stories like this. And I agree, with Kirk. I think that there are, we've already seen quite a few petty things coming out. There will only be more. Anytime there is a race that is this close and this competitive, and that means as much as this one does nationally, there is going to be a lot to it. So it's definitely going to be one to watch, and it's going to be impossible to ignore.
Yeah, those commercials for both candidates are running a lot, almost in every single commercial break. In fact, we'll probably see it after this segment here. Let's talk about messaging. As you just mentioned, it's all about messaging coming down the road. Mia Love connecting with the Holt family in her commercial that's running right now. What does she need to do, and how does that message fit in with what she needs to do to be successful in November?
I think it's an effective ad. I mean, Mr. Holt speaks for himself and gives her a lot of credit for that. It's hard sometimes as a member of Congress to tell people all of the great things you're doing. I know personally of a lot of the incredible things that Mia Love does. She works across the aisle, mostly because of the Congressional Black Caucus, but in other capacities more than most members of Congress. She's very devoted and focused on Utahns, and I think this was kind of her opportunity to say, here's a concrete example of things that I can get done because of my connections and because of my standing back in Washington, D.C.
On Mayor McAdams' commercial, it's all about family, his kids, his wife. What message does he need to continue to build on coming down the stretch?
Ben's message needs to be on experience. It needs to be on his family. It needs to be, exactly what he's talking about. When Ben definitely has a higher profile than Mia Love does. It's harder to have a higher profile when you're a member of Congress than it is when you're the Salt Lake County mayor. And so, because of his experience, he does have a lot that he can talk about. He has a lot that he can, that voters know him on, and so I think that's where he needs to be focusing. He's not a new candidate. People know Ben McAdams, and this is a great opportunity, and I think that's why you see the margin as close as it is.
Go ahead.
He just mentions one, I think, very important thing. They both are very well-known candidates. Those two are near the top of best-known Utahns for a reason, and that means outside groups that negative ads are not going to work as well as they would against them if they were better known. They worked really well against Mia Love when she first ran against Jim Matheson because people didn't know her. And the fact is, the better you know someone, the less effective negative ads are.
Real Clear Politics has this as a toss-up. All the polls have been close within the margin of error. In November, who wins this race?
Mia Love is still the presumptive favorite. I think she'll win it. I think the other thing that will help her if it continues to be this close is the House is in some jeopardy of flipping Republican to Democrat. And I think that will get the Republicans out to vote for her, and it will keep the conservative-leaning independents in her camp that might otherwise be willing to stray.
Will Democrats be celebrating this as a flip
I
seat
think
in
we
November?
will. I think that right now, this is Mia's race to lose. But I think Ben does pull it off. If he doesn't, I think it is because of all of the attention and what this does mean nationally and how Republicans feel, depending on what the scale's looking like nationally.
Okay, I don't know about your social media feeds, but mine is blown up over this medical cannabis ballot initiative. The church has come out, among many others, and I should say it's not the only religion that has come out in this coalition as well. But a lot of people upset over the church's stance in taking an approach to weigh in on this ballot initiative. Whether you like it or not, they have the right to do so. But should they? That's the question I want to get into with the two of you. Kirk?
You're absolutely right. They have the right to do it. Other churches have done it as well with this and many other initiatives. I think they feel passionately about it. They feel like this initiative does not address the main need, which is the need for medical marijuana, but to be dispensed in what they consider the proper way, under the proper regulations. And so they feel it's important to join the Utah Medical Association and others in saying, we agree with you on the ultimate point, but we disagree with you on this initiative. If they somehow switch this, the polls are overwhelmingly against them right now on it. If they somehow manage to pull that off, they're going to have to work very hard with the legislature and make sure something comes out of that, because there will be a lot of frustration.
Charlie, your thoughts there? Should a church be weighing in on this?
The church has the LDS Church has every right to weigh in on this. Now, what they need to do, though, is if they choose to weigh in on it, they need to own it. And that is one of the problems that we've seen with the LDS Church and their approach in Utah politics in general. They want to be involved, but they like to say that they're not involved. They try to keep that distance. But the reality is they are involved. And so, my only, advice would be, if you're going to be as involved as the church seems to be right now, and telling people we want you to vote against this, they need to own it. And, the only question really is if this is such an important thing to the overall church, why is it that Utah is really the first that they've really dug their heels in when we've seen these other ballot initiatives all across the country?
I want to get into, will it be effective? We have about a minute for that, and then I want to get on to one last thing. But you mentioned the polls. Overwhelmingly, people are saying they support this. How much of an impact will a church statement have on that?
It will be huge. It will be easily double digit, which for any organization to move anything double digits at this stage is monstrous, but it probably needs to be 20, 22 points. And so that's where it gets tougher. And I think to your point, it really comes down to, they own it a lot more than they did before. They've always been against it, but now with the email and the press conference, they're owning it. Will they now start really pushing and putting all their resources into it? If so, it's going to be pretty close.
All right, about 30 seconds. How much of a difference will
I think it's going to make a big difference. I still think that it passes. But I think, instead of, in the low 70s that it was polling at before the church's statement, I think we end up in the mid 50s.
Okay. Senator John McCain passed away the week. Just a lot of different memorial services for him, honoring him. About 15 seconds each, the legacy of Senator John McCain.
I had the honor of working for John as outside counsel, off and on, mostly on, from 1996 to 2015. I just loved the man. I think he was, by definition, an American hero, an American statesman. We need him so much right now, a voice of conscience and reason in the Republican Party. It's a huge loss to our country, but his legacy lives on forever.
All right, you have the final 15 seconds.
John McCain is an American hero. I've mentioned before that he is one of the most maddening politicians that I've ever followed, because he really was a maverick. You never knew exactly what he was going to do, whether it was picking Sarah Palin to be his running mate, or being the deciding vote to keep Obamacare going. You just never quite knew, which was the definition of a maverick, in my opinion, and he will sorely be missed.
Yeah, and people all across the country, even the world, saying that very thing. Gentlemen, thanks for the time. It flies by, but appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break.